How do you objectively know when you've achieved two-channel fidelity nirvana? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasalo with Audioholics. So I wanted to continue these videos about the two-channel fidelity, how to really achieve incredible two-channel fidelity, because I think that's really the staple of a good home theater system, to be able to play music on it equally as well as home theater. So I've been working on the Audioholics Smart House now for over a year and a half, and we've got the theater system pretty much dialed in. It sounds really good. We got the acoustics dialed in. We're now on the phase of just getting the trim work done and getting all the cosmetics nice. So that's going to take some time, unfortunately. But I was sitting in my theater room the other night with my best friend from college, and he's never heard this system before. And I sat him down, and he just wanted to hear two-channel, and he was just blown away by the precision that he heard and just the spaciousness that he heard. And he swore the center channel was on when it wasn't. And that's because I had a really good phantom center channel. And the speakers in a good two-channel playback system, the speaker should just disappear. And you should be able to hear the width and the depth of that soundstage, and just incredibly good imaging with a really focused and tight phantom center. And I was thinking to myself, well, how can I prove objectively that I've achieved such great two-channel audio? And, I was looking at some of the measurements that I took in the room, and I was talking with Matthew Pose about this. And, we came up with a couple of different measurements that you could do at your place, and you could kind of dial in and try to get this performance that I'm seeing. Now, there are some caveats. I am running a active RBH Sound SVTRS system, which you could see in this photo here. This doesn't have analog crossovers. It's done in a full digital domain. And the advantage there is I can get perfect frequency response matching in the room, above a couple of hundred hertz between the two speakers. And that's really what's indicative of good two-channel imaging and soundstage depth. So you can see the room is treated acoustically. We got Gramani Acoustic Sonatus in here. It's really made a huge difference in the room, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And we've got a 150-inch screen from Screen Innovations here. And behind the screen, since I framed it off the wall, I had the opportunity to put some passive treatments in there. And originally I was going to put some fiberglass, but then I found just getting really thick memory foam mattress from Walmart. The density of this foam is really good, and it helps with a little bit better with lower frequency absorption, in the couple of hundred hertz range. And having an acoustically transparent screen, this is a perfect opportunity to actually do room acoustics without having to see it. And the screen at very high frequencies, it bounces off the screen, so it's not over absorbing the high frequencies and killing the high frequency response in the room, but it's absorbing the critical, mid-band area where you tend to have too much energy anyway. And this really helps kind of focus in the center image of the whole stage here. And I wanted to show you just how the left and right speakers are. So here's the left speaker, and you can see the sidewall treatments. And here's the right speaker, and you can see very similar sidewall treatments. I'm a big believer in symmetry and getting the response between the left and right speakers right. And that also means getting the reflections similar between the left and right speakers at the main listening position. And in order to achieve that, you need sidewall symmetry and you need acoustical symmetry. And, I think we did a pretty darn good job in here, as best as I can for now in achieving that goal. And I'm going to share with you my room measurements to show you about this. But the first thing I want to really encourage you guys, if you're serious, whether you're serious about two-channel audio or home theater fidelity or both, the best investment you can make is getting one of these microphones. And I really like the Dayton Audio UMM6. It's so easy to use. It's a USB microphone. You plug it into REW, put your calibration file in. REW is a free software. And there's a bit of a learning curve, but we have a couple of videos on our channel that teach you how to use it. And you could always YouTube other channels. There's some great resources out there from a lot of guys that do room measurements. Really recommend this because it really opens up a world of calibration that you just can't do by ear. And I want to share with you now, I'm going to do a screen share to show you some measurements that are, I think, are really important to determining good two-channel performance. So here we are in REW. And I'm going to show you the first thing is the left and right frequency response. Now, these are very zoomed in measurements, so they're not going to look as flattering as you see when people use a lot of smoothing or they use a really large vertical scale. But this is the left speaker, and this is the right speaker, and this is at the main listening position. And if you see the frequency response above about 100 hertz or 200 hertz, they track almost identically. I mean, we're really with a fine-tooth comb here. You can see how close they match. Again, that's really important at the main listening position to get the frequency response very similar between the speakers. And then if you look at the combined response of both speakers, I'm going to show you that here. And you could see if I take this left and right away, they all combine synergistically, and I have really smooth bass response once all of the subwoofers are engaged. And I've got, you know, the way I like it, I calibrate systems. I do a slightly tapered off high frequency response, but I don't knock the 20 kilohertz down like you see in some of the room curves. Part of that is as you get older with age, you're less sensitive to high frequencies. And I'm definitely less sensitive now than I was 20 years ago. You know, hearing above 13, 14 kilohertz is a struggle for me now. So I leave this area flat, but slightly tapered off. And then I like the bass response to be about 10 dB higher than, you know, 20K. And that sounds about right to me. Everybody has different preferences. And of course, I could raise and lower the subwoofer level at will. But I wanted to show you now two measurements aside from frequency response. We really have three. We have the amplitude response, which I showed you, and they match. But I want to show you two other measurements that are really show you what's going on in a system. So this is called a spectrogram. We use what's called a wavelet. And you could see, I don't want to show you the left. I want to show you the left and right before I show you the combined. So hold on a second. So here's the left speaker. And you could see that this line from 20 kilohertz, this vertical line down all the way to 20 hertz, it's a straight line. And this is very difficult to achieve in room at the main listening position, especially with passive speakers. It's very hard to achieve that with passive. Usually you see this going all over the place. It's just not flat and linear like this. This is an incredibly good measurement. The fact that it's linear like a straight line, and then it just has a slight time delay at bass frequencies, which is normal. Even a sealed subwoofer, perfectly anechoic measured subwoofer, it's got probably about 20 milliseconds of delay at 20 hertz. And we're right there. And I'm using ported subs. And this is an in-room measurement. This measurement gives you high resolution detail, both in the time domain and the frequency response domain. So to get this kind of linearity and integration is really difficult to achieve, but it's possible. And it takes a combination of good room acoustics, good symmetry between your speakers, and getting the bass under control. And you can see that from the left speaker, and I'm going to show you the right speaker. Very similar, you know, a little bit difference in the bass. Obviously, we're having some bass issues on that right speaker, as you saw in the measurements. But once I get all the subs involved here, things really become different. And I want to show you the combined. So these are the main speakers combined with all the subs. And this is just like textbook beautiful right here. Really, it took me a lot of doing to get this measurement. And I do recommend, if you're serious about doing measurements, then it's called a wavelet. And you can see the different settings I have here for a wavelet. And if you guys are really interested and you want to see us do a video on how to use wavelets and how to interpret the results, you know, give me some comments down below. We'd be happy to do that. But I use this little trick to time align my subwoofers and just to make sure I don't have any nasty reflections going on in the frequency response at the listening position. And if you had a mismatch in your subs, then at the crossover frequency of like 80 hertz, you would see a huge delay. It could be 20 or 30 milliseconds, which becomes audible. And, you know, when you're under 5 milliseconds like this, it's incredible. It's definitely an audible. It's a great measurement. So that's one thing I wanted to show you guys. The next thing I want to show you is an RT60 decay. This is a little bit different than an RT60. RT60 is really for large room acoustics. RT60 decay compensates for, you know, smaller room sizes like we're dealing with. So I went and I ran an RT60 decay of the left and right speakers with the subs playing. And you can see from 100 hertz all the way out to 20 kilohertz, it's a linear line. If your room is untreated and it has a lot of reverb, you're going to see this kind of going all over the place. And I've seen rooms that have over a second of delay, which is absolutely horrible for fidelity. I like this is my personal preference, and of course, everybody has their own. You know, there's different acoustic experts that will tell you that they want to have a certain RT60 decay time. My experience in setting up rooms, like my rooms, as well as other people I've given consults to, is if you're doing 2-channel audio, you tend to want a higher RT60 decay than when you're doing home theater. Just because when you have more speakers in the room, you're going to need a little bit more absorption in there because you have more speakers creating that sound stage. So you're not relying so much on reflections. But I like, in my personal opinion, I like anywhere from 300 to 600 milliseconds of RT60 decay. And in my old house, I had an Audioholics treated room with a lot of absorption. And what happened in my old house is this line was pretty straight like this, but then it went down to like 240 milliseconds at 20 kilohertz. And I always felt like that room was a little too dead. And I could tell that because if anytime I'd have a conversation in the room with people, it just didn't sound as natural as it did when you went into a normal room. So the room we're in now at the Audioholics Smart Home Theater, you can walk in there and yes, it sounds quiet because the room was designed to be quiet, but you can have a pleasant conversation and it's not annoying to you. It doesn't feel unnatural. And if you could see here, we have an RT60 decay time of around 350 milliseconds. And it's just very well controlled. There's no big resonances here. It's linear. And it really makes a big difference when you have your acoustics under control. So those are the 3 measurements that I wanted to share with you that really help govern and help you objectively show when you have good sound quality for 2-channel audio. Obviously, your ears and your listening matter most, but I could tell you this has been a progressive stage for me. I started with the room with no treatments at all and just set the speakers up, and it sounded okay, but it sounded nothing like it sounds now. When I sit in the main listening position and even a seat or 2 over, I get that really strong phantom center. It's like the center channel's on when I'm listening to music with vocals. And the sound stage is not only really wide, and I actually hear sounds coming from the sidewalls, but it's deep, and I can hear beyond the depth of the speaker. And that's one big advantage. If people comment like, "Hey, how come you set up a home theater and you didn't put all 3 speakers behind the screen?" A couple of reasons for that. Number one is if I put all 3 speakers behind the screen, it would be a really big screen, and I'm only 15 feet away, and my wife would get motion sickness from that. And I'm at the point where 150 inch from 15 feet is about right. I mean, it's very immersive video wise, and it just looks great. The other thing too is it's fine to put a center channel behind the screen. In fact, it's preferred because it keeps the speakers at the same listening height, at the same plane. But if you put your main speakers behind the screen, you lose that advantage of having the speaker out in the room. And I know that I can't give you all the science behind it, but I have some theories about that. And I think when you have a speaker out in the room, you have the ability for that speaker to radiate all around the speaker. Its sound power goes 360 degrees, as opposed to when you put it in a wall, it's limited to 180 degrees. Now, there's some advantages to in-wall speakers. You eliminate the SBIR effects, speaker boundary interference effects, that you get when you take a speaker off of a wall, which can cause some of those bass problems that you saw in my measurements. But I really do find it hard to get a speaker to image that's in a wall, like one that's off the wall, that has some space in the room to breathe. And I'm not alone in this. I actually spoke to the guys at RBH, and they make an in-wall version of the system as well as the box ones that you saw with me. And they're on the same page. You know, they've set up the system with all the active crossovers in the wall. And if you're just strictly doing home theater, that's great. Put them all in the wall like that. But if you're serious about 2-channel audio in your home theater, this is what I recommend. I recommend if you have a dedicated listening space and you could dedicate that floor space, there's a lot of advantages to putting a speaker on the floor, off that back wall, getting them out, give them time to radiate around that room, and you could just create some 2-channel magic. And I hope you guys found this video useful. I did talk about a couple of different measurements that attribute to what I think is great two-channel audio. If you guys don't understand how to make those measurements, or you want us to do more videos covering that topic, give me some comments, smash that like button. You know, the more views we get on this, then I realize you guys are really into this topic and we could dedicate more resources for it. So guys, I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics, or if you just want to ask questions. And we're always here for you guys. We appreciate your support. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.